And welcome to this Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. I am so happy that we are able to be, a lot of us, live today, and I can look around and see your faces and welcome you here to this amazing, wonderful, beloved community of our congregation. We will begin this morning with the chalice lighting from Kate.
In the Soft Light of This Flame by Reverend Scott Taylor. In the soft light of this flame, may our lives shimmer anew. May we notice new possibility in those relationships that seem lost. May the turning of the year give birth to a dream. May the emerging light pull a new story into view. May what is give way to what might be. May we believe again in a world we imagine.
Blessed be. Thank you. That's beautiful. Now let us bring ourselves into this time of worship with music from Denise for centering. Thank you, Denise. That was lovely. And now we have opening words from Rob Pallme.
Our opening words today are from Sharon Wiley, who is the Spokane representative to the Washington State Legislature. Let this be the place to consider what you've never considered. Let this be the place to imagine for yourself something new and unthinkable. May this hour bring dreams of new ways of being in this world. Come, let us worship together.
Thank you, Rob. Our opening hymn is Come, Come, Whoever You Are, and we'll sing it through twice. You'll stay muted. Denise will sing to us and with us. And I'm told that the children have practiced this song before, and so I'm thinking we don't need words. We'll be able to sing along.
Whoever you are, ready? Come, come, whoever you are.
so much for that lovely opening song. And now we move to Jill Cicero, who has a story to share for all of us.
Hi, my name is Jill Cicero, and I'll be reading our story today. I'm going to tell you, in case you don't know, that before we begin, one of our characters is a rabbi, which is a religious leader of a Jewish temple or synagogue, much like the minister in our own congregation. We also hear the term Messiah. In some religions, people believe that God will send a special person to earth to save people from their troubles and bring an everlasting peace. And they call this person a Messiah. Our story today is called The Messiah Among You, and it is by Francis Dorff. Mr. Cohen was the teacher of the most quarrelsome third grade you could ever imagine. The kids in that class argued about everything. They argued about who should stand in front of the lunch line. They argued about what games to play during recess. They argued about who was the best reader in the class. And if Mr. Cohen asked them whether it was sunny or rainy outside, they even argued about that. Mr. Cohen was at his wit's end. There was so much arguing going on that no one was learning anything. When they tried to do multiplication problems, Janie and Stan argued about whether 2 times 2 was the same as 2 plus 2 or not. When it was time for spelling, Carmen and Ling began to quibble about who should get the first turn in the spelling bee. In music class, Carlos and Beth each tried to grab the tambourine, and Carlos ended up in the nurse's office when the tambourine hit him on the head. Mr. Cohen tried everything. He promised the class an ice cream party if they could get through just one day without an argument. Well, no sooner had he made this offer than Charles and Bobby began to argue about whether they should get chocolate chip ice cream or cookie dough. Mr. Cohen threatened the kids. He told them he'd send anyone who was arguing to the principal's office. That didn't work either. The principal, Mrs. Sanchez, pulled Mr. Cohen aside at lunchtime and politely but firmly told him that 15 students in one morning was quite enough, thank you, and she hoped to be able to get some work done that afternoon. Mr. Cohen called parents. He tried very politely asking the kids to stop. He kept the class in at recess. Nothing worked. There was only one thing left for him to do. Mr. Cohen went to his synagogue on the Sabbath, and he prayed. His rabbi noticed his look of despair and went to sit by him. The rabbi listened to Mr. Cohen's tale of the most difficult, argumentative third grade class in history. When she had heard it all, she simply said, "Stay home from work on Monday. Leave it to me." That Monday, the kids walked into their classroom and found the rabbi sitting at Mr. Cohen's desk. Of course, they immediately began to argue about whether Mr. Cohen was sick or whether Mrs. Sanchez had finally gotten so tired of the steady stream of arguing children that showed up in her office every day that she'd fired him. The rabbi just sat and listened. She didn't yell or try to interrupt them. She didn't plead or scold. She simply sat quietly at Mr. Cohen's desk. After a while, the kids began to wonder what was going on. The arguments gradually died down as the kids watched the rabbi to see what would happen next. When the classroom was finally quiet, the rabbi slowly stood up. "Mr. Cohen will not be here today. I am your substitute teacher, but I only have one thing to teach you. And listen carefully, or I will not repeat it." The kids were too surprised to argue. The rabbi's voice rang out in the stunned silence. "Last night," she said, "in my dreams, God told me a Messiah is among you." Well, they argued, of course. Pandemonium broke out in the classroom as the kids argued about who might be the Messiah. It couldn't be Charles. He was always getting into mischief. But on the other hand, Charles always could be counted on to help a friend or share his lunch. And Ling was clearly too bossy to be a Messiah. But then again, Ling went to church every single Sunday and prayed every night before bed. Well, what about Janie? She always did her work so carefully and neatly. Well, the arguing didn't stop overnight. When Mr. Cohen returned to school on Tuesday morning, the first thing he heard was Stan's angry voice. "I'm telling you, Carmen, Bobby is the Messiah. Just the other day, I saw him comforting a little first grader who had scraped her knee. Isn't that the sort of thing a Messiah would do?" Soon, however, the arguments began to disappear. When Janie began to argue with Charles that she should be the line leader, she suddenly offered to stand behind him in line. After all, Charles might be the Messiah. And in music class, Carlos and Beth took turns using tambourine. After all, one of them might be the Messiah. All that year, the kids kept trying to figure out who might be the Messiah. They began to think about each other differently. They noticed all of the good things about each other. Stan, he was a great artist with a huge imagination. Ling was passionate and strong. Carmen was the most loyal friend you could ask for. As for Mr. Cohen, he was a gentle, kind teacher. Maybe he was the Messiah. And the kids also began to think about themselves differently. Each child wondered, could I be the Messiah? And the children were inspired to be the best people they could be. Soon, the kids in Mr. Cohen's class had a reputation for treating one another well. Teachers came from far and wide to visit the class and ask Mr. Cohen for teaching tips. The year ended and the kids in Mr. Cohen's class graduated, having learned a very important lesson they would never forget. Everyone around you is special, and anyone could be a Messiah. Well, the next fall, Mr. Cohen looked at his brand new class of third graders. Already, John and Anna were arguing about whether or not alligators were the same as crocodiles. "Good morning, children," he began. "Has anyone here ever heard of a Messiah?" He lowered his voice to a whisper, so everyone had to be quiet and listen, and he said, "I've been told there is a Messiah in this class." The end.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for that story. You know, when someone tells you a story or tells us a story, we hear what the story is about. We learn something about the person who's telling the story, and we learn something about ourselves. We make a connection with the person, and if we take a little time to reflect, to think about it, we might locate ourselves within the story. We see where we connect with the characters or the particular situation. Maybe you imagined yourself in that classroom. We learn more about ourselves, what makes us happy or sad or angry or fearful, what we care about, what's important to us. We may find answers to questions about things that really matter to us. So stories help us figure out who we are and what we want to do and who we want to be in the world. In my Unitarian Universalist church where I grew up, I heard lots of wonderful stories. Some were about people that you might consider rather ordinary, and some were about people who lived such extraordinary or extraordinary lives that people talk about them for generation after generation. Stories about spiritual leaders like the Rabbi Jesus, Muhammad, the Buddha, Mother Teresa, and Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., whose birthday we celebrate this weekend, have helped people identify for themselves what matters most and to what they will faithfully commit themselves. Today is the first day of the Unitarian Universalist Association Side with Love campaign. It begins 30 Days of Love, an annual public advocacy campaign to harness love's power to stop oppression. It starts every year on the Sunday close to Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday and goes through the Sunday closest to February 14th, or Valentine's Day. The theme for this week of the 30 days is living our values in the world. So it seemed like a good time to look at what our Unitarian Universalist story tells us about the values we strive to live out in the world. So Unitarian Universalism has a rich story, a story that lets us locate ourselves in a long history of people who believed that reason, tolerance, and freedom were essential to human fulfillment, and that equality and justice among all the world's people was a right granted to each person simply by virtue of having been born into this creation. We are rooted in a story about people who came to this country in search of democracy and religious freedom. America is a pretty young country compared to many others. Unitarian and Universalist thinking came over with the Puritans. Our history and the history of this country are intertwined. Because we are a living tradition, we are looking always at how to expand our awareness of how best to live our values in ways that make our communities and our world more just, equitable, and compassionate. We have many stories, but then we have a few that stand out. And some are kind of overarching and talk about our theology. Maybe you have heard the story about King John Sigismund, a young king in Transylvania in the middle of the 1500s. His mother had modeled for him what it meant to be a good and wise ruler who tried to help all of the people. In a time of war and disagreement about many things, including religion, King John followed his mother's example, and instead of listening to his advisors urging one king, one country, one religion, King John heard the words attributed to Francis David, who said, "We need not think alike to love alike," and declared that all people in his kingdom shall be free to choose their religion without fear. He liked what Francis David said, and he felt drawn to David's belief in the unity rather than the Trinity of God. So King John Sigismund made Unitarianism a received or official religion of his kingdom, along with Lutheranism, Calvinism, and Catholicism. Sigismund himself became a Unitarian. And Unitarianism has survived in Transylvania, which is now part of Romania, for over 400 years. And the oldest Unitarian churches in the world are located there. Even that isn't the beginning of our story, though. Before the Nicene Creed outlawed the belief in the unity of God, in 325, now if you think 325 to 2021, that's a long time ago. Back then, Arius, the preacher from Libya, taught that Jesus was not God and therefore not part of the Trinity. For our Universalist roots, we can look back to the Christian theologian Origen, who lived way back then also. He was a little bit older than Arius. He believed that all people would eventually be saved. That same idea came here with John Murray, a minister from England who believed in a loving and compassionate God, unlike the stern God of the Calvinism that most people in England believed in. After losing his wife and baby to an awful illness, John Murray, sad and discouraged, left England for a new life in America, vowing never again to join a church or preach. When the ship he was sailing on ran aground on a sandbar off the coast of Barnegat Bay, he wandered into the New Jersey shore, where he came across the farmer, Thomas Potter, who also believed in a loving God. Now, while Universalism was not an established religion, many of the New England Puritans in the Congregationalist churches believed that God could not be so narrow-minded and mean-spirited as to sentence untold numbers of people to eternal suffering and damnation. Potter had built a church, a chapel, right on his land in order that the message of universal salvation could be preached, and he was waiting for a minister to show up. Murray showed up, and Potter was trying really hard to get Murray to preach universalism, and Murray was resisting. Finally, John Murray said that if the wind did not shift, and if his ship or boat was still stuck on the sandbar on Sunday, he would preach. And that's exactly what happened. And the people were grateful for his message. We can imagine that realizing he could make a difference in people's lives is why Murray changed his mind about belonging to a church and about preaching. He kept on preaching and founded the first Universalist church in New England. It's still there in Gloucester, Massachusetts. We refer to that as our Unitarian Universalist miracle. Now, in the 1800s, we moved up a bit. The Transcendentalists, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Louisa May Alcott, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Theodore Parker, and others opened the doors a little wider. Thinking that was not Christian was introduced, which challenged the Unitarians to widen their horizons and welcome some strange ideas. This, no doubt, created a great bit of tension among them. Thoreau studied Buddhism and other Asian religions. The Transcendentalists introduced new ways of knowing with intuition and reason as guides. Emerson is quoted, and we're taught this frequently in our classes in theological school, that a person should pass the truth through the fire of thought. Because the Transcendentalists were mainly a part of the American Unitarian scene, Unitarianism in other countries has remained more biblically oriented. So our story is a story of people who persevered in the face of persecution, sometimes death, to keep alive a religion that honored difference, that fought for equality for all people, that believed an end to suffering was a worthy commitment, that the world could be a hospitable home for the human spirit, that beauty, truth, and good can be constantly revealed to us in new and previously unimagined ways, if only we have eyes to see and ears to hear. Did we have some blind spots? Do we still have some blind spots? Yes. Are we struggling to see and hear more clearly now? Yes. Just as the Christian and Jewish stories have themes of connection and freedom from oppression in their theology, our unique Unitarian Universalist story also recognizes that our lives are filled with a struggle to escape oppressive forces. Some of our own imagining, some of them are caused by our own imagining, some from sources that grabbed hold of our emotions or our thoughts, even at a very early age. Freedom from bondage is a theme in faith and wisdom traditions because each person at one time or another is imprisoned by thoughts or feelings. It's part of the human condition. As Unitarian Universalists striving to make our circle ever wider, we acknowledge the struggles we face. We come together in our full humanity to celebrate the tender moments and to find strength to face the tough times. No one gets through life without some of each. And so each Sunday is an opportunity to come together, virtually for now, to celebrate our story, a story that honors and appreciates the gift of life in all its diversity, that challenges us to use our minds and hearts in the ongoing struggle for freedom, equity, and justice in human relations. A celebration of the life that gives us opportunities to use all we have in service of our Unitarian Universalist values. And we have been practicing this song for a while, and so I think we don't need any more instruction, but what the stories that we've heard today are about is about shining our light in the world, showing up who we are and with what we value. And so I'm going to go by memory of what I remember from being taught from Linda, and we'll all do the same and sing together, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." And the one verse that I don't think we did in the video, but it's in our hymnal, is "All around the world, I'm going to let it shine." All right. And Denise will play and sing for us.
3 times?
The 3 verses.
Okay. Ready? Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. There we go. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. That was fun. So we come together as a community to support one another, as I said, through the tough and tender times, and part of being beloved community, which we're celebrating today in honor of Martin Luther King Jr., who took that phrase from Josiah Royce and used it to help us understand how it is that we come together to share our lives with one another, to support one another, and to work hard for justice, compassion, and equity in human relations, which is one of our principles as Unitarian Universalists. So right now, one of the ways that we share our lives with one another is by sharing our joys and sorrows. And that can be done in a number of ways, but the way we're doing it now on these live Zoom virtual formats is that you can type your joy or sorrow in the chat and I will read them. So if you would like to move to the chat, just slide your arrow down to the bottom where it says chat and click on there. And there will be a little space at the bottom where you can, it says to everyone. That's what mine says right now. And you can type a message in the chat to everyone, or you can pick a person or me if you only want to send it to one person, but I'll only read the ones that come to everyone. From Val, the Levitt family, my joy is that I get special time with just my mom next week, and I have a special journal that I have been writing in. Excellent. From Leslie Grill, I am grateful for my new job and hope that I can do a good job at it. And we are grateful that you have a new job also, Leslie. Everybody is celebrating that, and I'm sure you'll do a wonderful job. From Lauren Alexander, my joy is seeing our new UUCP friend, Bill Sloan, here this morning. Yes, welcome, Bill. It's good to see you. And from Erin, fear and hope for our country this week, mostly hope. Yeah. From Will Levitt, my joy is that me and my sis were playing volleyball with a green balloon. All right. Way fun. From Jill Mary to everyone, happy that my son and husband are spending the day having fun together today, since he's been working so much, and excited to have joined the homeschooling group with fellow UUs and others. So that's Jill Cicero. And is your middle name Mary? From Trista, joy seeing my loved ones getting vaccinated so we can hug again and see each other's smiles close up. That's so beautiful and wonderful. From Joe Vincent to everyone, both my, Joe's, and Bradley's dads could use prayers and good vibes for medical issues they are going through. So let's hold Joe and Bradley's dads in our thoughts and send all those special vibes we can. And joys also that their parents got their first vaccinations, or vaccination jabs, he says. Yay, yes, yay. And from Bill Kaplinger, last week would have been Bo Davison's 78th birthday. It's a good day to be a UU. Thank you. From Erin, great day. That's what it says, great day. From Lisa Ralston, my dad, Bob Williams' 86th birthday is January 21st. Oh, we wish him a happy, happy birthday. I'll say that Hedwig had her surgery. She took a fall. She had some surgery on her back, and she was already up and around a couple of days ago. So that's really good news. And Carol Trotter, it's been a pretty bumpy road for Carol. And so any good vibes, thoughts, prayers that you can send to her and her daughter, Christine, would be much, much appreciated. We're kind of waiting to see how things progress with her. From Emma, Maeve says she had a great week drawing and writing a dragon encyclopedia. A dragon encyclopedia. I hope to see that. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing those joys and sorrows, and for all of the ones that remain in our hearts yet unspoken. We have one virtual candle, or we can look at the beautiful chalice that Kate has lit for us. Yes, to reflect all of the joys and sorrows, spoken and unspoken. And now we are reminded that this beloved community is supported solely by those of us who love it and care about it. And that is why every Sunday we give you an opportunity to text to give, or send a check to the church, or however it is that is your preferred way to donate to the church. And so while we watch the slide for how to text and give, Denise will play some music for the offering. Thank you. We have been letting people break out into small groups, and we're going to do that again. It's an opportunity to say hello to one another. Maybe you want to share a word or two, like not a monologue, but a word or two about how you're doing right now through all of this turmoil in our lives, or the peace that you're feeling by being at home, whatever. But let's have a few minutes to greet one another in a smaller group. And when you get in your group, of course, you may unmute yourself so people can hear you and you can have a little conversation. And then when we come back, we'll have a very beautiful closing hymn and closing words. Welcome back. We have a beautiful song now as our closing hymn, thanks to Laura Keith King, and we can sing along Dona Nobis Pacem if you know it, and if you don't, you will before it's over. So we can mute ourselves again and sing along. And then Erin has closing words for us, and then we'll have a little ceremonial goodbye at the end.
All right, the words are Dona Nobis Pacem, over and over again. This is a short introduction and 3 parts. Dona nobis pacem, pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Nobis pacem, dona nobis pacem, dona nobis pacem, dona nobis pacem, dona nobis pacem, pacem, dona nobis 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 pacem, nobis pacem, dona nobis pacem, nobis pacem, dona nobis pacem.
Thank you, Laura Keith King, very much for that lovely song. And I hope everybody enjoyed singing along. I see some of this happening, so I think so. Erin Renfroe has our closing words.
Our closing words today: an ending or merely prelude to a more glorious beginning, by the Reverend Dr. Michael A. Schuler, parish minister of the First Unitarian Society of Madison, Wisconsin. We have reached the end of this time for the gathering of memory and for letting the imagination play with future possibilities. We have enjoyed magic moments and edified each other. Shall it be concluded then? Or will this adventure now commenced continue? Our separate paths converging, meeting, merging in the unending quest for love more perfect, the joyous struggle for meaning more sufficient and life more abundant. Is this ending to be an ending or merely prelude to new, more glorious beginnings? I pose the question. In your hearts lies the answer.
Thank you, Erin. And now I'm going to put my camera on gallery view so I can see everybody again. And you may unmute yourselves and tell everybody goodbye. Wave, shout somebody's name.
Bye.
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 Thank you for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, Nate. Bye, Kate.
Bye.
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 Bigger picture.
Bye.
Later, Alex.
We don't want to leave, do we? We want to stay. Prolong the delight.
Thank everybody, yes.
Yeah, so much fun. Oh, right.
Thank you for coming, Bill Sloan.
Yeah, good to see you, Bill.
He is
Both of you Bills.
Well, he's the main Bill.
I'm
a pass through Bill. I'm
Yeah.
a pass through Bill.
Good to have you, Bill. Bill and Bill.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Nancy.
Bye.
Trevor and
Bye,
Alice.
Katie.
Thanks, Kate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
work.
Thanks, Nancy.
You're welcome.